Hare Krishna, dear friends. This video is a little different than usual. We are thrilled to share with you a very fascinating project. In 2019, two devotees from the USA, Costubadas and Raghunath, started a daily podcast where they engage in reading and discussing the Srimad Bhagavatam. Since then, they inspired thousands of listeners to dive deep into the ancient Vedic spirituality. Their podcast has a unique approach. It blends depth with humor and honesty and makes the Vedas so relatable. You can listen to it on many platforms, including YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. In February, we interviewed Costubadas when he was visiting Sridham Mayapur. He shared with us some insights of the podcast, as well as his extensive experience in Sridham Mayapur.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Today we're here with Costubadas. He is from New York. He grew up in New York and he has two very interesting projects. One is the Wisdom of the Sages podcast, where he, together with his friend Raghunath, is discussing daily Bhagavatam. If you never heard of Wisdom of the Sages, please check it out. It's a very lively conversation and very down-to-earth Bhagavatam discussion. But before we dive into these projects, I would like to ask Costubadas about his Mayapur experience. Because he's here now visiting in Mayapur. So
that's why we took the opportunity to catch him for this interview. I'm personally very happy that he's here. I listened to Wisdom of the Sages many times, and I just like the style and how you introduce Krishna Consciousness to other people. I really like the style, and I'm also since '56 I'm a big fan of. I was listening to Raghunath. If people don't know, Raghunath has actually a very famous band in the punk rock scene.
Yeah.
And when I was very young, 15, 16, I had no idea about Krishna Consciousness, but I think from him I heard the first time the mantra, Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya. You know, this is he started his one album, one song with the mantra, and so there's some connection with Raghunath also in his previous band. Maybe I can put in a little snippets of the of his music.
His band Shelter.
Shelter, the band Shelter, exactly.
Yeah.
So.
We're Shelter, and this is the message of the Bhagavad.
Therefore, I'm very happy that Prabhuji is here and we can have a nice talk today.
Well, I'm really happy to be here, and I really love what you're doing with your YouTube channel. Your videos, I think, are really, really, really great. Love them.
Thank you.
So, Mayapur.
Yes. Yeah, please maybe to start with, you've been here since long time, many times, I guess, since in the past, and I heard already some glimpses on your podcast. You're sharing some things about Mayapur, so maybe you share your experience about.
I think the first time I came was 1989. I was relatively new to Bhakti, somewhat new, but I was practicing it for sure. And honestly, I remember riding in on a bus in the evening as the sun was going down, passing through the villages on the way. It's a little different now. They send you through different roads and so on, but then you're really going through the villages. It's really, I remember the road was very, like massive potholes, like just everywhere constantly. There was a bit of a rough ride, but I can remember distinctly, very distinctly, as the bus was approaching Mayapur, coming in through the broader Nadia district, which is all like very considered holy, a very deeply spiritual holy place. As we're passing, and as the bus was going through, even in the villages, I was hearing kirtans. And something was rising up in me, some kind of happiness that was special and unique that I feel when I come here all the time. But it was just coming, as I was coming here. And so that was my first entry. Mm-hmm. And I used to come every year at this time for the Mayapur festival. And I would serve my guru here Tamal Krishna Goswami. I would. It was great for me because it was an opportunity to meet devotees from all around the world, and every year I'd come back and meet them again. So that was wonderful. It was wonderful because I had special experiences here with my guru, where I'd get to spend more time with him in this special place, hear from him, hear from so many other wonderful devotees. But beyond all that, there was the Dham itself, this holy place. You know, of course, it's mentioned in the sacred texts like Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that living in the holy Dham, living in the holy place, is one of the most powerful, potent ways to become transformed through bhakti. And so to be able to spend some weeks here, some weeks in Vrindavan every year, it reshaped me in many ways. It was very special, and in one sense, no place more than Mayapur.
What do you mean by reshaped?
Yeah.
Can you, maybe one example, what is the Holy Dharma doing?
Well, you know, spirituality, it's when someone is fortunate, they recognize that although there are pleasures in this world, and although, you know, along with those pleasures comes suffering. And when they begin to look at life a little deeper, they think, I have a higher potential than this, than trying to find happiness through external things. That deep within me, there's something that's more than this, that has the potential to experience a deeper type of truth, a deeper type of meaning, and ultimately a deeper type of happiness or bliss in life. Something that's not dependent on anything that's external, something that's not dependent on anything that's temporary, something that can't be shaken no matter what the external circumstances are. Finding that within, you know, is the goal of spiritual life or self-realization. And so all the things I just said, those are nice ideas, nice theories, but one needs to taste it somehow. One needs to experience it somehow. And that can be hard to find. That's found through special people. If you can connect with a special person that's experiencing it, then in their presence you may begin to feel that kind of thing too. But also places. And this place, the faith of the people in this, you know, in our lineage of Bhakti Yoga, what's expressed in ancient texts is that this place is not an ordinary place. That Mayapur Dham, or Navadvip Dham, the larger area, is one, it's non-different from Vrindavan. It's Vrindavan, but another flavor of Vrindavan, a very special flavor, a flavor wherein even if you are not very spiritually qualified, it reaches you, you know, it touches you. So there's that. It literally, what these texts are telling us is that underneath a thin layer here, like you could look at this place and not see it, but if you have a bit of deeper spiritual faith, or if you have the blessing, you can see a little bit deeper into it. And that just on the surface, which is, even the surface here is very beautiful, very beautiful and pleasing and lovely.
Yeah.
But if you go even just a little bit deeper, you connect to the spiritual realm. You actually, the spiritual realm is here, waiting for us to experience it. Mm-hmm. And so you can taste things here, you can experience things here. For instance, I was coming every year after that first time I came. I think I came every year for maybe the next 12, 13 years or something like that. And I think it was maybe 1990 or 91 was the first time I went on what they call the Navadvip Parikrama. Yeah, right. So
it's starting tomorrow also.
Starting tomorrow, yeah. So I think I was on the second one that ISKCON did.
Wow.
The first one I think had 90 people on it. And the second one that I was on, it was Ramanathan and myself.
Wow.
Oh.
And I think it had about just under 200 people.
Wow.
So, which is at that time.
We're laughing because now it says thousands people, seven different groups.
Tomorrow is the biggest parigram ever they ever had, the most registration. I think over 10,000 people heard.
10,000 people in different groups.
They had like 6-7 different groups this year.
So the first time Raghunatha and I went on it together, I can't describe the feelings that we were feeling. It was, you're camping out, it's 9 islands, right? Now that you may not be able to see the island, but you're crossing rivers in 9 different areas. Each one has its own special leelas, special pastimes that took place there. And through them, the meaning of this place is revealed step by step. And so you're traveling with all these devotees, having kirtan everywhere you go, hearing beautiful talks everywhere you go, relishing incredible feasts. It was amazing what they would lay out. We're eating like kings, you know, but we're sitting on the ground and eating off leaf plates. And honestly, the beauty of Mayapur and of Navadvip, it was like, for me at that point in my life, I would look at it and it was like almost, it was too beautiful for me, for my eyes to take it in, you know. It was like, it was almost like I just couldn't, I needed more eyes to kind of see how beautiful it was.
Nice.
And it was like that everywhere. And you know, they would have this very simple way of sleeping, like they would have just like bamboo poles and they would wrap burlap around them and everybody would just go in there and sleep. But Raghunath and I were just like a little adventurous and we would just kind of go and find some other places. Like sometimes even village people would just like allow us to sleep in their home. Or someone would have like a little loom factory, like a small, it was basically just a bamboo hut where they had their looms in there where they would make cloth. And we would sleep in there. We were meeting, even we didn't speak their language, people would invite us to sleep in their home. And we would make some kind of beautiful connection with these people and we'd sleep under the stars. And every step of that prikrama, 9 days and 9 nights out there camping out, it was like, rather than just reading about Sri Chaitanya's leelas and pastimes in these books, it felt like you were entering it. You felt a happiness that you didn't feel before, a kind of unity amongst all the people that doesn't normally happen in this world, and a kind of, I don't know, carefree, beautiful lifestyle. So that from that point on in my life, when I would read about it in these books, it wasn't so foreign. I understood a little bit more about what was happening, what was the meaning in them. And so then we began to do that every year. But the year after that, actually my Guru Maharaj caught on, he's saying, these people are having too much, you know, fun. Because the GBC, the first 2 years was happening at the same time as the GBC meetings, the same time as all the different global leaders of the Hare Krishna movement were meeting. So then they said, next year we reschedule this so that we have the meetings first, and then or either way, or either they do the prikrama first and then they have the meetings, or it was one way or the other, I don't remember. But in any case, all the GBC came, all their disciples came, and it shot up to, I think, 1,200 people the next year. But actually it was even more, like, it was just off the charts. So anyway, those are my early memories of coming here. Those prikramas, serving my Guru Maharaj, you know, living here for a couple weeks, building up to Gaur Purnima, the birth of Sri Chaitanya, and how beautiful those nights were. The full moon is rising, and I would be serving a feast to all the senior devotees, and then when it's all done and you're exhausted and everybody's happy, everybody's feeling bliss in their heart, and then you sit down and you eat yourself, and just, it was nothing but wonderful, beautiful memories of this place for me. It's when I come back now, I think I went quite a few years without coming. Maybe like 8 years or something like that. It's somewhere in the 2000s area.
So experience Mayapur in the early days and experience Mayapur now. What is your, could you see some, you know, what's the experience now? What's the difference?
I have to admit there's some nostalgia there for me, you know, like coming back now and remembering those times.
We can sense that.
Yeah. But it's not just that.
Yeah.
I suppose everything is still there, and it's being here kind of revives it. But I suppose that I'm just trying to feel it deeper. You know, trying to feel it deeper. trying to understand really what this place is, and what, like for instance, you know, I'm staying with my friend Tara, a dear friend, going from way back, and we can just open up Chaitanya Charitamrita and start to read together, and just feel, you know, the connection to this place, the connection to all the different practitioners of this going back in through the centuries. Feel it here, you know, in a way that that's special. I don't know if I can say more. You know, it's very special, and that you take with you when you go. You know, maybe it starts to wear down a little bit as you're away. In other words, the awareness of it. When you're exposed to, you know, like myself being exposed to New York, your awareness of it may weaken, you know, but you come here and you feel it deeper, and then hopefully each time, kind of. I think your original question was, what does it mean by shaped? You know, you asked me what I meant by kind of shaped me in a particular way.
Yeah.
But it's almost like in Bhakti we believe that that it's like God or Krishna is the root of all existence. And we're like a leaf on the tree that he's the root of. So our happiness and our well-being and our vitality in life is in that connection, just like a leaf's vitality is in connection to the root. But the awareness of that kind of can slip away, and we don't feel that connection. We're not feeling that energy all the time. But you know, I do feel that coming here it revives that awareness, and then you carry that with you as you go, and then you come back and you recharge again, and hopefully gradually you're aware that awareness is there all the time, and deeper and deeper and deeper.
So but you do it here now, but going back to New York, you started the Wisdom of the Sages podcast together with Raghunath. Can you tell us a little bit more how it started and how it developed? Because it's quite an astonishing development.
It's interesting. Well, Raghunath and I are old friends. We both came from the punk rock scene in New York, going way, way back. And in the late 80s, we were monks together. As I mentioned, we would come here, but also serve in the West together. And so we've always been buddies. And so I think it was in early 1999, no, I'm sorry, 2019, in early 2019, I was being inspired, especially by Vaisheshika Babu, to read Bhagavatam every day. And my wife and I said, okay, let's do this. If we read 80 verses per day of Bhagavatam. 80? 80. 80.
80.
Yeah.
80 verses every day.
Okay.
Yeah, we weren't reading the commentary, but we were reading the verses. 80 verses took something like 25 minutes to 35 minutes, something like that amount of time. We'd read a few purports, a few of the commentaries. If we read 80 verses a day, you read the entire Srimad Bhagavatam in 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we started doing it, and we were just loving it. We were just like, it was the best part of the day. And we were really feeling inspiration from it. And I was kind of like telling all my friends, you know, like, you know, you should do this too, you know, and they're like, well, maybe I should. And then they would start doing it. They're like, you're right. You know, like, why were we not doing this all along? The books are sitting there on the shelf, but, you know, this is life-changing. So shortly after that, I think it was March of 2019, Raghunath said, I have a few friends, they want to study with me every morning on Zoom. This was before a lot of people were using Zoom, because it was before the lockdown and all that. So he said, they just want to study with me early in the morning, like 5 a.m. in the morning, and they want to do it every day. What do you think I ought to do? And I said, you should do Srimad Bhagavatam every day. I'm telling you. So it's real. It talks about it in the books. If you just read this every day, how it enters into your heart and changes your life. I said, it's true. You know, just do it. He said, okay, I'll give that a try. So he started meeting with just a handful of people, 5 or 6 or 7 people, every morning at 5 a.m., reading Srimad Bhagavatam with them. At beginning, I think, March or April of 2019. And and sometimes he would just point his phone at himself while he was doing it and broadcast it live on Instagram. So more people started joining it. And then it was, 10 and 20 people, 25 people, and so on. And then in the summer, he invited me on sometimes when we were together. I would just do it with him. And people began to say, oh, this is like a good combination, because we have very different personalities, People,
Everyone can tell.
yeah, it's one of the essential. It's a kind of a classic formula in entertainment.
Yeah.
Like there's one person that's kind of more straight guy and one guy that's more like colorful, I suppose you could say.
Okay.
And
everyone can judge for himself who's who.
Yeah, it won't take you long.
Just check out the podcast.
Yeah, and so so that dynamic and that tension made hearing the Bhagavatam just easy and entertaining for people. And Raghunath also brings a lot of humor to it, and there's humor in our relationship, and there's love in our relationship too. And I think that became an important part of it, like the friendship that's there. Just to see two people that have been friends for 35 or more years just interacting is an interesting thing to witness or to hear regularly. And so by September, I was like every day with him. And more people were listening still, so it was getting up to 50, 60, I think it got up to about 85 people were tuning in at 5 a.m. every morning to hear Srimad Bhagavatam.
Why 5 a.m.? I always wondered why you don't.
Well,
why you do it
that's just
that
what
early.
he started. Honestly, I don't know exactly why he started at 5 a.m. But it's a good time because it's before everybody has to go to work. It's before your kids get up. So if you're determined, it's a great time to concentrate.
But they start also in the beginning to record it and put it, or
They
was it
were
just
doing it live on Zoom, and we were doing it live on Zoom. We know people were downloading it from Zoom just by word of mouth. They hear about it, but we had no idea how many. I'm not sure, but we were getting a live audience of about 85 people. So then we said, okay, it works. We should make a real podcast, brand it, and release it. On all the different podcast platforms. So we began that on January 1st, 2020. And we were hosting a retreat at the Govardhan Eco Village and in India, outside of Mumbai. And so we launched it on that day and began doing it. And so the idea was that we read Srimad Bhagavatam together, but we're going back and forth and sharing our thoughts and our experiences, and but not, laughing a little bit and able to poke fun at ourselves a little bit, and but still trying to get deep into the message, still trying to take from it what's meaningful and relevant in our lives. And I think that's where it really touched people.
I think this really comes out in the podcast, that you really addressing people's also, challenges, needs, difficulties also in life, and bring it back to Bhagavatam. It's not just on a very high philosophical level.
Yeah, one real important ingredient in it is we try to be very honest about ourselves. We're not trying to pose as like we're gurus or pure devotees or like this. We can openly say that we struggle. We can talk about what life is really like. Like Raghunath will come on and say, oh, I just watched this thing on Netflix last night, and it's like totally disturbing. You're not normally going to hear that in a class on Bhagavatam, but fact is the audience knows what that means, and and can relate to it and can be inspired.
Half of the audience probably watched it too.
That's right. But an amazing thing happened that, so we got that started on January 1st, 2020, and we did it for a month at the Govardhan Eco Village. And then Raghunath and I took a smaller group then to Jaipur and Vrindavan. So this is the beginning of February now of 2020, and I'm just falling asleep in bed. Raghunath bursts in the door and says, "I just got a text message from Joe Rogan." And so Joe Rogan does not only the world's most listened to podcast, but I would say, from as far as I understand, probably the world's biggest media platform right now.
As far as I understood, he's one of the most influential in the media spheres.
if you appear on his podcast, it means 15 million people, 20 million people are likely to hear it. And so that was, Raghunath knew Joe Rogan.
Yeah, because they knew each other. Huh? Yeah.
Going back to the late 90s, I believe. And Raghunath was, sometimes he would talk about Raghunath on his podcast because they used to do martial arts together.
Okay.
And he used to call him Yogi Ray. That was his name for him because they knew he did yoga. And they would used to say, like, yeah, he's got this special breathing thing that he does, and and so Raghunath was thinking, maybe someday he'll invite me to come on his podcast. But and it could have been any time over the years, but it was like Krishna waited to inspire him right when we finally got our act together and had this podcast to direct people to. Otherwise, it would have been great if we were on that, but there was nowhere to direct people. But because we had it up and running, I think it was in mid to late February of 2020 that Raghunath appeared on the Joe Rogan show, and then our listenership shot up overnight to like, the next day was like 10,000. It went from like, I don't know, like 700 or something like that per day to like 9 or 10,000. Then it's kind of settled down at about 5 or 6,000. But then since then it's been steadily increasing. Today we're like we get about 8,500, 9,000 downloads per day.
That's like unique listeners.
Unique listeners, yeah.
In different platforms altogether.
Yeah, more on the audio platforms. That's the majority, and then some on YouTube as well.
I mean, just to highlight this point, like to have like 8,000, 9,000 people listening to Bhagavatam and to your presentation. I mean, this is something really
daily, not just once, daily.
Daily. I had to think it's actually almost like a stadium of people listening to Bhagavatam every day. It's beautiful
because it's also for us. If you have you always see views, and numbers, on the screen, and it's sometimes difficult to, of course, if you see a stadium on this big stage and people sitting there, but as I said, we try to make a shot of people now with 10,000 people going on the parigram, and you need a drone to do that. So just imagine this kind of people numbers. It's
and the wonderful thing is we hear back from them.
Yes, because what impressed me also, you didn't stop there. You didn't like, okay, let's do this daily Bhagavatam classes. But what I understood is like you developed it further to like helping them really further in their lives, dividing in little groups. Is it?
We're just starting really. But you begin to realize there's all these people and they're writing you letters, and they're asking you questions like, "What do I do next? This is fascinating." A lot of interesting things came out of the Joe Rogan thing because Raghunath and I had been teaching bhakti, and especially in the yoga world, for a long time. And we were used to speaking to Western audiences and translating these texts in ways that were relevant to them. But mostly we're reaching people that were interested in yoga, sometimes college classes or things like that. But through Joe Rogan, it was just like this infiltration of just people from all walks of life. But they were interested in wisdom. They were interested in how do these ancient texts and the insights that they have into life affect. Maybe I've never done any asana before in my life, but there's something here that's meaningful.
Or maybe not be religious at all.
Or have you even been, turned off to religion for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But this is the thing that, our largest demographic is probably 35 to 45 years old. So these are people that have been married, that had kids, they've been in the business world, they've been divorced, they've been heartbreak, disillusionment, all the different kind of things that pretty much everybody goes through in life. But Bhagavatam was providing answers to that. Like, okay, what's next? Now I'm 40 years old, right? I've had some joys, in life. I'm suffering pain in life as well. Whatever fantasies I had about life never manifested. That's the case for most people. Or even if they did, they weren't what you were expecting to be, and you're still suffering in life. What is the meaning in life? Is there something more to this? And if so, how do you find it? And Bhagavatam can speak to that so clearly. And when you're hearing it every day, then it begins to really have an effect. And Bhagavatam itself says that, Nityam Bhagavata, in many places says if you hear this regularly and sincerely, it will change your life. And by the time we got to 500 episodes, we did a special episode number 500 where we just heard testimonies from people that listen every day. We went on for 2 hours. Some of them we were reading, and some of them were people live on Zoom. And you really just see how people from all walks of life, how this wisdom is so relevant and how it's so life-changing. And so, it's a beautiful thing to discover how it is affecting people, how real it is. And so we had to say, well, what can we do? Ramanathan and I began to realize we were fortunate that when we were young men, people that were experienced in bhakti were kind to us, took us by the hand, brought us to places like Mayapur, Vrindavan, taught us Bhagavad Gita, taught us Srimad Bhagavatam, exposed us to the lifestyle, exposed us to the culture, exposed us to incredible people, incredible places. They did that for us. And now there's these thousands of people that are right where we were when we first got interested in this. They're not as free as we were, as 20, 21-year-old men with unmarried, no job, like we were free to just...
No worries in life.
Yeah, yeah. And so these people mostly are in other circumstances, but we want to give them what people so kindly gave to us. We want to introduce them to these teachings more. We want to introduce them to these places, to these people, to these practices. And so the first thing we did was something called sage groups, which meant that I just need some people that I can get to know, make friends with, and open up about. So sage groups they're just an hour and a half discussions. We provide some notes on a topic that was discussed in the previous week on the podcast. And there's a person that guides the conversation, usually someone that's a little bit more experienced. But it's not so much about learning. It's really more about discussing. Being able to share one's thoughts, one's doubts, one's concerns, one's good experiences, hearing from others, making some friendships. And that sangha, that sadhu sangha, being the next step forward in one's life.
But it's online as well.
That's a Zoom. Those are Zoom meetings.
It's also Zoom meetings.
Yeah. Some of those are have different themes, like for parents, for men, for women. There's LGBTQ group. There's a hardcore group. People are hardcore punk rock. But most of the groups are just wide open. But they're really people. We get incredibly good responses from those. Now we have about 330 people in the groups. And about 40-something groups, I don't know, 40, 45 groups, something like that.
Amazing.
But that's just the start. This year we really want to start to get deeper into this, and we realize that what people really need is systematic training and education. Because they're looking for it on the internet, just trying to find it. Okay, why don't we just try to put this together so that someone can, in 6-month semesters, map out their course of study, what they need to learn to really understand this practice, meeting really great teachers online, and so on. So we want to build that next. We call that Sage Academy. And we also want to, there's more to it than that.
Wow.
Yeah, okay. I could go on and on, but we want to provide a few different, I'll say quickly. First is Sage Groups, that's for Sangha. Sage Academy for training and education. Sage Care, meaning that people practice bhakti until they bump into some bump on the road, and then they stop. And it may be practical, I have 3 kids and I don't think I have time to practice this. It may be philosophical, cultural, psychological, whatever those pressing, drawing from the people in the sage groups, we want to find what are the most pressing issues in your life that you need assistance with. And we want to build a team that will respond to that and create the resources that answer the questions, share the kind of, maybe create separate groups if there's a need, maybe provide some one-on-one consultation if there's a need, maybe direct them in a direction if they need something. So we want to develop that sage care. And then we also want sage engage, which means if you're practicing bhakti, you need some service, you know, something that you do to contribute, to use your energy and your creativity, your time, and make an offering of it. And so that'll be a big challenge, you know. But we want to reach out to people, hear what their interests are, how they might like to serve in bhakti, and try to help them find that service.
Amazing.
So a lot of things we want to do. We need a lot of help. People out there, if you can help, let us know. But we
Yes,
need to build a
yes,
big
yes.
team for this.
Really to take on people's needs and people's obstacles and try to help to overcome and see how to facilitate. It's a huge task, a huge task.
And we're hopeful that the resources that are created can be used broader too. That wherever there's an interest in bhakti, that, like say parenting, right? Say I'm new to bhakti, I have 2 children, but I have absolutely no idea what my responsibility to them is as a bhakti yogi. Am I supposed to tell them to chant every day, or is that not a good idea? You know, dietary, you know, in terms of internet and television, you know, help me here. I don't know how to do this.
Yes.
Then
yes,
okay,
yes.
let's create some resources. Let's have a conference. Let's record the conference. People can listen to it later. You know, so we're trying to think like that. That resources can be built that others can use.
But what's also beautiful about it, because we're also kind of creating a blueprint also for other devotees, other people.
It may
kind
be.
of.
It may be.
I think it's already starting. I have one friend, maybe you know him, Chade from Germany. He's, you know, he wants to start similar things in German, you know,
Yeah.
with some. He's starting small, of course, but
We encourage
you know,
that. Fully encourage that.
yeah. So I think it's very beautiful also, you know, not. First of all, giving people the opportunity to, you know, hear Bhagavatam and be engaged with your program, and also give tools to other people to work with it. And
You know, there's something about the podcast platform that's just very appealing. A very easy entry. You can listen while you're driving home from work or cooking, and it's once you get into it, you become a little addicted to it, and so you start to listen every day. And people tell us all the time. They say like, I've never met you, but I feel like you're a member of the family because you're in my home every day. You know, every day we're hearing your voice. You know, so it's just easy, and everybody's eager to download the next one and hear the next one. And once you get caught up in it, we have a lot of inside jokes and things like that. But once you start to listen, you catch on to them, and it just becomes a very natural part of one's life. And so I think it's a format. It's one format. There should be so many that devotees can use creatively to enter into the popular culture and bring bhakti. And I believe, and this is why I appreciate what you're doing so much. I believe that just by bringing bhakti into the popular culture, it has the answers, practical answers to life, and to understand what spirituality really is. That spirituality isn't just some vague thing, but it means the recognition that within every living body there's a spark, there's a soul, whether it's a human being, whether it's an animal, even a plant, where we see birth and growth and maturity and reproduction and gradually dwindling in death. That means that there's a soul there that creates that cycle. And the idea that the soul within every living being is of the same quality. It's only the bodies that expand or contract our potential to feel and to communicate and so on. And then the understanding that each soul is sacred, that it has to be respected and appreciated and ultimately loved. You know, and ultimately that's where spirituality goes, that one can move through life loving the root of all existence, seeing God in the sun, in the moon, you know, in the river, in the mountain, in nature, feeling God within one's own heart, recognizing God within the heart of every living being, honoring spirit wherever you see it. Deeply spiritual people from so many different cultures have realized this. The bhakti culture, it's explained in incredibly lucid detail. That it's just too good not to, and then the whole culture that goes with it is just, this is nicely highlighted in the videos that you do. It's beautiful, it's entertaining, it's fun, it's family friendly. Kids can get into it. You can be into it as a child, fully absorbed and happy in it, to an old person lying on your deathbed and it has more meaning to you than it's ever had before. It's too good not to spread. It's just we need to start to be creative about how people can contact you.
Yes, as this is, you know, I personally really appreciate because, you know, we're presenting our videos, we put it out there,
Yeah.
and, you know, whoever's watching is watching it. What I like really about the podcast, you not just putting it out there, you really bring people in, engage them on a very personal level, help them in different ways. So it's also...
We have a lot to do on that one.
Yeah,
We just
I know,
started,
but even have like a live Zoom, you know, where people
Yeah.
can, you know, we don't do anything live, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying I'd like to really, you know, also guide also all the audience, whoever's listening to this, to, you know, take the opportunity
appreciate it.
and come to your podcast
Maybe
and
put a
tune
little
in.
link
We will
in
do
the description.
everything.
Okay.
We'll do all of this. So this is our intention why we actually brought also
Thank
here
you. I
to,
appreciate that.
you know, guide our audience also to your, because I feel great and I can be really helpful for, you know, so many people.
Well, that's very appreciated.
So yeah, we really appreciate your service, you and Raghunath,
Thank you.
and the whole team behind it who is helping. And yeah, we will link everything in the description and please check it out. Go on his podcast and have the good association of Kastuba, Raghunath and the rest. And I think we are kind of, you know, done it with this podcast, and yeah, happy to meet you in person finally.
I thank you both so much. I really love everything that you're doing with your videos, and it's an honor to be on your show.
Thank you.
Thank you
Hare
so much.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.